Hello, bookworms. Welcome back to the Bonafide Bookworm. I'm your host, Rachel, and if you're here to read along with me and improve your English. So, a few things. One, I did not have enough space on my phone to get everything recorded like I wanted to, so that's why I didn't post Tuesday or Thursday. Very bad me. But I'm back from traveling. I had a good trip. Got a lot of things taken care of, and I got 2 books read, so I do have a book review for you. I left them for other people to read, so I will pop up a little image of it. The first book that I read was The Fifth Horseman by James Patterson, and that book, again, is the murder, hold on, I always say it wrong, the Women's Murder Club. Women's Murder Mystery Club? Women's Murder Club? I don't know. Women's Murder Club. It's a series of books. It's about a particular lieutenant in San Francisco, and she becomes friends, or she has friends, like with the coroner, a lawyer, and a news reporter. And so together, they kind of combine their resources to figure things out instead of keeping things siloed and not sharing information. And this book, let's see. This book was good. And again, it's one of those mysteries, like, you can't say too much about it, because if you do, you're gonna spoil who the bad guy is. There's some bad people in this. I'll just leave it at that. And it was good trying to figure out who was doing what, who's really bad, who isn't. It was good. One thing I do hate, though, he introduced a character that I really enjoyed, and that character just gets murdered. So I guess that's just one of those things moving forward, to remind myself that, hey, James Patterson will kill off his characters, which, to some extent, I think that's what makes good books believable, is because, things don't always go smoothly in life. Sometimes there are people in our lives even that move on from us, whether it's they move out of state, they had the relationship dissolves, or maybe they do end up deceased. So it sucks, but it does make the series a little bit more realistic. Something else I'm trying to do, and I don't quite know how to fix it, I'm gonna have to Google it, is I've noticed that when I talk to you all in the camera, I feel like my eyes are like up here somewhere or something. I don't feel like I'm actually really looking at you all. So I'm gonna try to work on my eye angle there. Let's see, what else? Oh, still working on the Adventures of Ivy and Finn. If you haven't gone over there, please go check it out. I'm going to start posting more videos. I tried to capture videos of Ivy's parents while I was traveling, so that I could post some of that, because they are super cute dogs too. And then, we have new viewers. So welcome, new bookworms. I hope you enjoy being part of the Bonafide Bookworm channel, and thanks for watching. So we're going to pick back up with Untamed Seas by Deborah, Kiley, and Meg Noonan. And when we left off, they were in a really bad storm. Meg had gotten hurt. She fell, I think, and got hit. She fell on deck, I think, is what happened. Or she was coming down the stairs, and she got hurt. So John is now calling the Coast Guard, and they're trying to get some help because they need to get her to the hospital, but they're out in the middle of this storm, so things are not going good on the Trash Man. So that's where we're picking up. We're on page 72, and I'm just going to pick up at the top because I just feel like it's been so long. I think we stopped about midway down, but I'm going to pick up from the top of page 72. And again, this is now John the captain is like, we got to do something. Debbie's sick. We got to get to the hospital, although they're on a boat. So he's like, I'm calling the Coast Guard. So that's where we're at. Debbie, be quiet for a minute, will you? John said. The bottom line is we have to get Meg to the hospital. I'm going to call the Coast Guard and get a course to the nearest port. How do you think we're going to get into a harbor without an engine? I said. Don't you think we'd be better off just routing it out? It's not like Meg is in any danger. Who's the skipper on this boat? John said angrily. It's me, all right, me, and I'm calling the Coast Guard. Shit, I said after John went below. I know, but what are you going to do? Brad said. At 6:30 in the morning, Brad took the helm from me. We had been on watch for 6.5 hours, and conditions were still getting worse. I slid back the hatch and stuck my head below. The cabin was a wreck. The two chairs were lying on their sides, their cushions soaked. Everything that wasn't nailed down was shifting with each violent heave of the boat. John was on the radio talking to the Coast Guard. I gave them our position, John said when he finished. And I told them we had an injured person on board and that she required medical attention and that I needed a course. They said to stand by. The radio crackled with static. The Charleston Coast Guard was calling back with a course for John to steer. We both went up on deck to tell Brad our new heading. I don't know if we can do that, Brad said. It's going to put us broadside to the waves. Just do it, man, John said wearily and went below. Brad struggled to bring the boat up to meet the new course, but with only the staysail and a small triangle of mainsail, we were almost dead in the water. Wave after wave pummeled our starboard side. We can't do this, Brad said. I'm bringing her back down. Go tell John. Turning, I saw Mark standing by the hatch. What the hell are you yabos doing out here? Can't you keep this tub on a course? Shut up, Mark, Brad snapped. It was the first time I had heard him speak that way to Mark. Go get John, and why don't you check your fucking watch while you're at it? You have any idea what time it is? Mark glared at Brad, then went below. Why does he have to be such an asshole? I asked. I just can't believe. Debbie, stop. Just stop. I am so sick and tired of you two bitching at each other all the time. Just shut up for 1 minute. You think you could do that? Stung by Brad's words, I reached for the wheel. Move over, it's my turn, I said coldly. Brad stepped aside and went down the companionway without saying another word. I decided to try to bring Trashman back to the Coast Guard's 300-degree course. I could feel the enormous pressure on the rudder as I steered her, but if I cracked off the course just a hair, I could maintain enough speed to keep the waves from mauling our starboard quarter. It wasn't 300 degrees, but it wasn't far off, and we were making headway. It probably wasn't going to get us where John wanted to go, but trying to get into any harbor seemed suicidal. We had had enough trouble getting into Cape May with engine power and only 35 knots of wind. John was crazy to think he could do it in this way. Brad came back up to tell me they were going to put the Lexham storm shutters over the cabin windows, and I'd have to handle the helm by myself. I can't do it anymore, Brad, I said, fighting back tears. I'm so tired. You tell John or Mark to get up here right now. In a couple of minutes, Mark reappeared. He didn't say a word to me, just took the wheel. I felt dizzy and weak. I thought I might pass out. When I made my way down to the main salon, I heard John on the radio again, setting up a schedule for hourly radio communication with the Coast Guard. The clock said 8:20 a.m. I had been on watch for nearly 8.5 hours. John got off the radio and asked me to help Brad find the window covers. I took a deep breath. All I wanted to do was sleep, but I knew I had to help. I found Brad digging through gear in the forepeak. We looked for 20 minutes, but we still couldn't find the last shutter. I could hear Mark shouting from the cockpit, "Someone better bloody well come right now. I'm not staying up here by myself. Either you get up here now or I'm going to lash the helm and come down." Brad said he would go up for a few minutes if John promised to relieve him soon. Water cascaded through the hatch as Brad climbed up. The boat shimmied and moaned as it hurtled down the face of a wave. We landed hard, and all three of us fell against the walls. I heard Meg scream in pain from the aft cabin. "That's it," John said. He crossed to the navigation station, turned on the radio, and began trying to raise the Charleston Coast Guard. After 2 attempts, he got a reply. "I know I'm calling a little early, but I think I'm going to have to ask you for assistance," John said. "We are really getting beat up good out here. The hull's down in the water, and things really don't look too good right now. Over." Hearing John admit defeat frightened me. I had never been on a boat that had requested Coast Guard assistance. I felt a confusing rush of humiliation and relief. I went up and told Mark and Brad that John had just radioed for help. "No way," Mark said. "We're fine. We don't need the bloody Coast Guard. Fucking amateurs." John came on deck and told Mark he'd take over the helm. Mark sat down in the cockpit next to Brad. "Fucking amateurs," he mumbled again. When I went down to check on Meg, I found her asleep on the floor. She looked as if she hadn't moved in 10 hours. I wondered if she'd even gone to the bathroom. Seeing her like that filled me with a rush of guilt. I worried that she had gone up on deck because I had taunted her, and now here she was hurt. We slammed into a wave and I fell against the door frame. Then I worked my way forward. John was calling me and I joined the rest of the crew in the cockpit. "I want to make a sail change," John said. "The staysail's ripped. I want to try letting out just enough of the Genoa to give us a little stability. And we're going to let out a little more of the main. We've got to get some speed." Mark stood with his arms folded, shaking his head. John ignored him, and in a minute Mark went below, still muttering to himself. Brad and I got busy carrying out John's orders. Suddenly, as I was bending over, I saw Mark burst up the companionway and lunge at John. He was holding a winch handle over his head and was about to bring it down on John's head. I screamed and John ducked. "What are you doing?" I shouted at Mark. He turned toward me and brought the handle back over his shoulder again. Then he reached out with his free hand, grabbed my arm, and twisted it hard. Brad dragged Mark off me, and then Mark turned toward the water and brought his arm back again as if to throw the winch handle overboard. Brad twisted the handle out of Mark's hand, and Mark pulled away and stormed down the companionway. "He's insane," I said in disbelief. "He's shit-faced," John said. "Forget him. We have to do this now." John went to the leeward side, where the staysail was sheeted, and began to ease off the sheet while I pulled in the furling line. When John took the new sheet to the Genoa and wrapped it around the winch, I moved to the starboard side and began uncoiling the furling line for the Genoa. I knew if I wasn't careful, the wind could catch the sail and pull it all the way out. I eased the line around the winch and let it out slowly as John brought the sheet in. And then, in a flash, my worst fears came true, and the entire Genoa was flying out in front of the boat, flapping thunderously. Trashman was being pulled over onto her side. The furling line had snapped. When John saw the sail take off, he immediately released the sheet, and the boat righted itself. "We have to get down," John shouted. If the sail got caught under the hull, it could drag the boat down with it. John worked his way out to the bow, fighting to keep from being washed overboard by the waves raking the deck. I crawled to the main mast and wrapped one leg around it. The wire rope jib halyard was corroded onto the real winch, and when I finally was able to force it off, I motioned to John to pull the sail down. He gave a couple of strong tugs. Nothing happened. I looked up and saw that the head of the sail had been blown right out of the groove that held it to the forestay. After taking several raps on the winch and locking the halyard down, I made my way back to the cockpit, struggling to keep my feet under me as the water swept across the boat. We desperately needed a pair of hands. We desperately needed another pair of hands, even if they were Mark's. I ducked down through the hatch and saw Mark talking on the radio. "Not that bad," he was saying. "I'm just dealing with a bunch of yabos. Mark, get off the radio. We need you up here now. We have to get a sail down." I went back up and tried to figure out how to get to John. He was still at the bow, but the leeward side of the boat was now completely underwater. "What the hell?" I heard Brad say. When I looked up, I saw Mark bursting out of the hatch with a butcher knife in his teeth. He took it out of his mouth and started waving it in the air, shouting, "Idiots! Just cut it down! Cut it down! You're going to get us all killed!" I worked my way toward John, clipping my safety harness from one anchor point to the next. Just as I reached him, a wave collapsed on us. We clutched at each other and the sail. When the water had subsided, we counted to 3, then pulled as hard as we could. I felt the sail move a little. Another wave engulfed us, and we waited. Then I pulled again harder, and the sail came billowing down on top of us. Water swept across the bow, and suddenly I was floating in folds of dacron. I felt myself being dragged to the leeward side of the boat. My hand hit something solid. I gripped it and pulled myself out of the cell and back toward the cockpit. When I looked back, John was still engulfed in the cell, trying to haul it on deck. "Let it go, John!" I screamed. He was going to die saving a sail. A wave knocked me over and washed me to the leeward lifeline. I gasped for air and clawed my way up. Then somehow John surfaced next to me. "Keep going before the next one hits," he shouted. Water poured down on me again and I was sliding. Then I felt someone grab my foul weather gear and drag me into the cockpit. It was Mark. "What the fuck are you guys doing? Why can't you just leave things alone? You're gonna get us all killed, for Christ's sake." He had put the knife down. The air was so full of spray it was hard to see and hard to breathe. The four of us sat in the cockpit, hanging on for dear life as the boat yawed and pitched and dove. Mark buried his face in his hands. I took the helm while John and Brad began securing the shutters over the 3 starboard cabin windows. The port side of the boat, including the windows, was completely underwater, so even if we had found all the shutters, we never would have been able to attach them. I continued to steer the boat, although steering is not an accurate description of what I was doing. It was all I could do to hold the wheel as we rode over the mountains and charged into the valleys. My arms were shaking with fatigue, and my hands were so raw and red and cold I had lost all feeling in them. When the starboard shutters were finally secured, John went below and Brad took the helm. Mark came into the cockpit and said John was on the radio with the Coast Guard. "I think they said they're sending a plane," Mark said. Brad and I laughed out loud at the thought of it. A plane flying out here to find us? It seemed ridiculous, but Mark insisted that was what they had said. I looked up at the low smudged sky. What could a plane do for us now? Maybe airlift Meg, or all of us, off the boat? But that would mean abandoning Trashman, and I couldn't see us doing that. Meg came to the companionway. I was surprised to see her moving around. She said a plane was headed out to us and we should holler when we heard it. That way John could tell the pilot when he was getting close. What with the roar of the wind, the crashing of the waves, and the whine of the vibrating rigging, I didn't know how we'd be able to hear it. But sure enough, in just a few minutes we heard an engine. John stuck his head up through the hatch. "See anything yet? They think they're right over us. Let me know as soon as you see them." I looked up and waited. Like a dream, a small twin-engine prop plane emerged from the low clouds. I banged on the hatch and called John. Brad, Mark, and I waved and shouted and laughed. It seemed so crazy, so unreal, as if some great mythical bird had swooped down out of the heavens to snatch us from our hell. "Ever see an albatross, Brad?" I shouted without taking my eyes off the plane. "No," he said, watching the plane make a slow circle. "They're incredible. I saw one in the Southern Ocean. It was blowing stink just like now, and this huge bird appeared out of nowhere and hung over us. They're supposed to be good luck." The plane disappeared for a moment in the low clouds, and when it reappeared, we all waved again. Then it dipped a wing and went back into the overcast. I could hear John on the radio. The Coast Guard said 2 merchant vessels were near us, the Gypsum King and the Exxon Huntington. They had been advised of our situation and were going to try to rendezvous with us. They were about 5.5 hours away, which meant that one or both of them would be here sometime around 4:30 in the afternoon. Okay, I thought, we can hang on until then. The rush of seeing the plane wore off, and I realized how tired I was after being on deck for almost 11 hours. Brad and I left Mark at the helm. He seemed to have sobered up somewhat, and since we had finally managed to manually furl the entire mainsail and we were under bare poles, there wasn't much he could screw up. John had put the EPIRB, an emergency transmitter that can send distress signals to passing planes and ships, on the chart table. The radio had been turned off to conserve power and wouldn't be turned on until we made our next contact with the Coast Guard about noon. All we could do now was wait and try to get some sleep. I headed back to the cabin and peeled off my layers of clothing. The only dry clothes I had left were an old red sweatshirt and a pair of striped nylon running shorts. I put them on and climbed into my bunk. It was damp, but I didn't care. I heard water pouring through the shutters in the companionway. Then I heard the thump of the bilge pump kicking in. The ships were probably 4 hours away now. If I could just sleep for 4 hours, help would be here. Just as I was dozing off, Mark started hollering. I'm not staying up here by myself. Somebody better bloody well get up here, or I'm lashing the helm. I'm gonna lash the fucking helm. Not my problem, I thought. Not my problem. Chapter 5, page 83. We're gonna stop there now. This is crazy to me that, like, anyone could sleep knowing that half your boat is, like, already submerged and there's really nothing you can do about it, but you're exhausted. So I guess that's what she's going to do, is try and get some sleep, because what else do? You can't do anything at this point. So we'll come back Tuesday and see if that plane is able to reach them to save Meg, or if those 2 other ships show up. We'll see what happens. So anyway, I hope y'all have a great day, week, month, year, wherever you're at. I hope it's great, and I'll see you next time. Bye.